Thank you, sir.
Honourable John Banks.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to oppose the Psychoactive Substances Bill, and I will oppose it at every turn until it ends up on the statute book with the numbers, except for myself in this House. This bill is well-intentioned. There's no doubt about that, and is aimed at ensuring that psychoactive substances sold in New Zealand are as safe as possible. And I want to pay my respect to the new Minister, Todd McClay, for his noble intentions with this bill that he inherited from the ex-Minister. However, I simply cannot support it. I find it totally unacceptable that this bill fails to rule out testing these recreational drugs on innocent animals. Protecting animals is ingrained in my soul. I think most New Zealanders will be outraged at the idea that chemicals people use just for fun can be and likely will be tested on harmless animals. Animals will be put to extreme pain, animals will suffer, and animals will die. That is why the countries in the European Union have banned testing cosmetics on animals, in particular rabbits. We must remember psychoactive drug substances are not a necessity, and we should say to people today from this Parliament that they're high-risk substances under any circumstances. They're not a necessity for the well-being of the human person. Recreational drugs are not something one needs to consume. They're not something people should consume. And we should say from this Parliament today that young people, any person, should not be consuming these substances. That's the first message. They aren't life-saving medicines or something that will relieve suffering. People don't need to take these chemicals. Their prolific use will cause widespread animal suffering. There is simply no justification or reason for unnecessary drugs like this to be tested on animals. And I, for one, find it deeply offensive that any government would sanction this. Animals will be in pain, and animals will all die in the name of people wanting to take mind-altering drugs on the weekend. That is simply wrong and unacceptable. Animals must not experience suffering for economic or entertainment reasons, or for lining the pockets of the drug importers and the drug dealers that will be selling them to the dairies to ladle the minds of our kids. I know the Select Committee inserted a new clause in the bill to state that animal testing should only be used when necessary, but animal testing will never be necessary for recreational drug purposes. It will never be necessary to cruelly treat a beagle puppy in the name of a recreational party drug. Evidence shows animal testing is not necessary at all to prove the safety of these mind-altering chemicals. Dr. Ian Shaw of the University of Canterbury says non-animal testing can adequately establish whether a substance has unacceptable risk of acute toxicity. Cell culture, ex vivo and SAR studies can all be used to establish the risk. Non-animal testing regimes can test all of these substances to establish the risk, according to Dr. Ian Shaw at the University of Canterbury. I can't for the life of me see the mischief in allowing the good people of SAFE and the RSPCA to come to the Select Committee to make a submission. What would have been the mischief to say to these good Samaritans in our community that protect harmless animals from cruelty, come to the Select Committee of the Parliament and have your say? I know why they weren't, because the ex-minister would have been embarrassed by what they would have had to say about our obligations to treat animals with respect and dignity. So this afternoon in the House, the ex-minister says it's not our intention to test these substances on animals. He said it 4 times. It's not our intention. I interjected from that seat there, tell me, Minister, ex-minister, will animals be tested? It's not our intention. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, Mr. Speaker. I asked the minister 4 times, the ex-minister 4 times. The naive ex-minister said, it's not our intentions, it's never been our intention, but that's not what the bill says. The bill does not rule out the testing of beagle puppies with these mind-altering, dangerous chemicals. It does not rule it out. There would be no mischief whatsoever in taking Mojo Mathers' SOP and embracing it, and then we would have world-class leading legislation on mind-altering substances, mainly for our young people, that would be sold by the drug dealers in the dairies on the corner. We would have that then. What would have been the mischief? What would have been the mischief of taking Mojo Mathers' bill? It was a pig-headed attitude by the ex-minister that stopped it and nothing more. Because I know my friends in the National Party on the Select Committee wouldn't have worried if that had been the directive from the ex-minister. But the ex-minister couldn't see it in his heart and in his soul to protect harmless animals from being treated with these dangerous drugs. If you can't prove your fun drug of choice is safe without putting animals in abject misery, you can't sell the drug. If you need to pay more for more expensive non-animal testing in China, where it will be tested, I say tough luck again. That is the price you pay, and that is the price that you have to pay for the profiteers of these dangerous chemicals who sell them to our kids. The reality is the bill could well result in drugs being tested on animals in places like China and India, where animal welfare is shamefully non-existent. Most of these substances will be tested in China and in India, where there are no animal welfare rights and no animal welfare care and no responsibility. The statement in the bill that overseas testing must be carried out in accordance with the New Zealand Animal Welfare Act is nonsense, because there's no way for us in New Zealand to assess what goes on in the torture chambers of animal testing laboratories in Southeast Asia. There's no way we can test there. There's no way we can put our high standards of animal welfare on regimes there. So despite assurances from the ex-minister, this bill fails to rule the use of extremely cruel LD50 tests, and we'll wait and see where that goes, and we'll talk about it later. But even worse, these animal testing places test their drugs on man's best friends, as I said, dogs. Or more importantly, on beagle puppies bred for purpose. Some have said that Mr Kerridge, the eminent Mr Kerridge from the SPCA, supports this. Nothing could be further from the truth. Mr Kerridge has told me, quote, "It is a matter of record that I am opposed to any animal testing for the approval of psychoactive products, and my presence on this committee does not alter or condone it at all." Finally, I want to thank Mojo Mathers for her work on this bill and her SOP, which I'll be supporting, and I'm sure other parties will support it as well. But I say to her in the Green Party, if your amendment at committee stage fails to get the numbers, you should vote against this bill anyway. The Green Party has an excellent set of credentials around animal rights and animal welfare, and I applaud you today for those. Mr Speaker, we are sacrificing animals at the altar of recreational drug use. It is a disgrace to this country. It shouldn't happen. It does not need to happen. We could stop it. It could be world-leading education. And I repeat these words. As the most powerful creatures on this earth, humans have a responsibility to protect all animals from senseless, worthless and shameless cruelty at all times, in all places. And I'm starting with this here today in this Parliament.
Barbara Stewart.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I stand on behalf of New Zealand First to